the fact that we're in process doesn't disqualify us
either
from engaging.
Right.
And I'm just so afraid that so many men that are coming into this elder sage and hearing this invitation, this message for the first time, are going to respond to it by saying, I don't have the qualifications.
Right.
I'm not there yet. I don't have my degree, right? And I think this is exactly as you said, this is very much.
We're all on a journey.
With God, there is always more. More love, more life, more freedom. Welcome to Zoweh's Exploring More with Michael Thompson. C.S. Lewis once wrote, "Our Heavenly Father has provided many delightful inns for us along our journey, but He takes great care to see that we do not mistake any of them for home." Join me and the team as we explore the kingdom together, discovering the deep truths and offering encouragement for the journey. There is always more.
Welcome, friends and allies, to the Exploring More podcast. I'm Michael Thompson, hanging out with my bro, S.J. Jennings. And it's still in bounds. Happy New Year. Can you say that? How many weeks do you get on that?
As many as you want.
Really?
I think. Yeah, sure. Why not?
Let's
throw that out there.
Well, you're in a generous mood today, so we want to see what happens.
Yeah.
That's good. So, yeah, Happy New Year, friends. And, yeah, it's great to be back in the room and talking about things that matter to us and exploring the kingdom of God and our stories. And, yeah, man, some cool stuff today. What do you think?
Yeah, absolutely. Going to talk about the next stage in our journey of masculinity.
We're looking
we're
at
approaching, right?
You know, when you're on the highway, and there's something great about finally seeing that destination. And usually, you probably know better than I, it comes on about somewhere 200 miles or less. That's when you start seeing
the signs.
The sign.
Yeah.
You know,
Florida state line.
Yeah,
or wherever you're going.
Somewhere on the coast, it'll say, you know, Orlando. 1,800 miles or something, or, you know, just to give you, but so this stage that we get to talk about a little bit today, the elder sage, the end of the masculine journey, this climactic space for men and women have their version too of what it is to move into the over 65 and older, I guess.
Typically
is this stage. There's some. Right, there's markers in all of our lives. At 16, you can drive. You know, you get your license, or 15, you can get your permit. 18, is it 18? You can go into the military.
Yes,
you know,
and vote.
Yeah, and vote. 21. Right, there's what's 21's benefit?
Yeah, well, I mean, if for some folks, it's the partaking of adult beverages.
There you go.
Yeah, which is not what's in here.
They don't know what's in here.
They don't know
right
what's
now.
in here, or if anything is at all, actually.
But and then there's, I think, I'm 58 and you're 50.
I just turned 53.
So
52. Yeah, I just turned 52.
That's exactly a hazard of that stage. I went almost a whole year thinking I was like 55.
Yeah, I remember
54.
that. I remember.
So
you're like, hey, I got a year for free.
It's part of the deal. And but I'm thinking these other mile markers, right? 55. That's when I got the discount at McDonald's for coffee.
Right.
You know, which felt like
senior discounts.
Illegal. You know, dude, I mean, that's just not cool.
Yeah.
Making you feel. And the AARP magazines.
Yeah, they ramp up a notch at that
And by the way,
I'm all about the discounts, by the way. I'm looking forward to them.
Even if there's of a backhanded punch of, you're old enough for that.
Right.
And that's kind of what we're talking about. You're old enough for that. You know? And so, this stage, I'm excited to talk about. We were talking about off camera, just this elder sage initiative, the thing that is happening in Zoweh, kind of connected to King Me, and yet we've been talking about this for some years.
Yeah, I think you said it was part of the process of writing King Me that kind of this had been stirring in you some, but it kind of put a little gas on the fire.
Yeah,
that you were working on King Me. Is that right? How did the whole elder sage initiative come about? Let's go back to its origins.
Great question. Writing about anything, you get to investigate that thing.
Yeah.
You get to research that thing. And yet in the masculine journey, I would say for us, we're on that thing. We do that thing.
Right.
And
you're researching the rocket while you're riding on it.
While you're hanging on. And so that was true for this. And I do think, coming to the elder sage stage, there's this forecast, in front of me. And I know other men, good men, that are in that stage and have been in that stage. But, looking at, so there's a part of King Me, writing King Me, there was this hope, and there's a few, but there was this hope that this resource, these discoveries put in a collection of, 17 chapters could be helpful to men on their masculine journey. So that's kind of the bigger idea. And then I started, looking at every decade in the journey leading up to this one, and realizing as we have that, what doesn't get done or doesn't get done well actually goes with you into the next stage.
Yeah, you don't leave that luggage behind.
No, there's a deficit.
Yeah.
There's something that is still void or vacant or a loss, even if things that should have happened that didn't, validation and initiation, and things that shouldn't have happened that did, wounding, bruising, of our hearts and our identities, those things, that goes with you, And so I look at this particular stage of elder sage and was looking at statistics and looking at things. I even looked up some more, and it was just in preparation for our time, SJ, and it's just discouraging the level when you look at fatherlessness. 1 in 4 children are fatherless. It was one statistic, but then it really, between 1 and 18, 1 in 3 children will be fatherless. So in the current statistic, in the current state of fatherless, for a variety of reasons, but 1 in 4 are fatherless. But 1 in 3 will be somewhere in their journey.
That's not going in the direction.
And that makes sense when you look at divorce statistics.
Sure.
And at the same time, divorce statistics aren't helpful for the best number, because you don't have to be divorced for there to be fatherlessness.
Sure.
And that could be, and they're talking about absence of a father in the home. And I'm saying that's not the only indicator of fatherlessness.
Right.
You can be home. You can be a man that's home, and that is not going well.
Yeah, physically present, but emotionally unavailable.
Right. And so, to look at more, not to get lost in the statistics, but to see the significance of a father in the life, and a mother too. We're just talking about fathers right now, and the elder sage as masculine hearts go, and to look at the significance of masculinity. I remember Eldridge saying this or writing this in Wild at Heart. It's masculinity that bestows masculinity. That's the way it's supposed to go down.
Passed on.
Yes.
Yes.
So if God is a God of order and process and creates things for a certain way, then, like C.S. Lewis said, what evil does is try to corrupt goodness.
Right.
And so when you corrupt this structure of what a father's meant to be, and masculinity bestowing masculinity, and fathers blessing and initiating and validating sons, all of that in this this thing that is the role of father and son, and is, when I think about like David to Solomon, right? And then we get the Proverbs, because Solomon writes them down and he tells his sons, this is what I was taught. so there's this bestowing, there's this legacy.
Yeah.
And legacy is a reality where it isn't a matter of if you'll leave a legacy.
Right.
You will.
Right. Will you be intentional about it?
And will it be good?
Right. Sure.
And for most of us, this thing, fathering thing, we're, even if you read manuals, I just came from Cole and Josh's office, and they were talking about their little guys, and I'm about to step in here, and I'm just going, wow, you guys are so much further along than we were, and yet you cannot get all of the instruction that you need. So much of it is just hands-on and how to handle their hearts in these different moments. And so anyway, all of this, SJ, to say, I got to this stage and felt like God was beginning to pull back a curtain and show me that this mission that we're on to see masculine hearts restored, if that's done well with enough men, then there's masculinity restored.
That's the hope.
But that's the hope. But masculine hearts restored. And when I say restored, I mean becoming who God intended them to be.
Right.
Individually.
In the process, right.
Of walking with Him, of receiving love from Him, and receiving blessing and receiving instruction and receiving, yes, even warnings, all of that.
Yeah.
From a capital F Father.
Yeah. The redemption takes place.
In that process.
In the process. And in that moment, Jesus has won redemption for us in the context of the spiritual realm, right? But the restoration of all the things that have been lost, all the things that have been missed, all the things that we've done or did not do, right? Takes time and is a process.
And if there's restoration, it's because there's some things that didn't go well.
Yeah.
Or didn't go rightly. Or didn't go in the way that maybe God intended it to be.
And that's the way what you were talking about before. I mean, the ideal is to have a father who raises you, who is oriented to our Father, God, and can validate and affirm us and raise us up as young men. That's the ideal. Yeah. It doesn't mean that a single mom that's raising a son alone isn't making a valiant effort. It doesn't. We're not talking about the ideal to diminish any other circumstances that aren't ideal, right? Right. But the ideal circumstance that God has created is the one you're talking about.
Yeah. And we've another tangent to get, there's the feminine heart of God, the masculine heart of God. There's gender, there's representation in this thing that there's an ideal that a son and a daughter need both. And both walking with God, a mom and a dad who are walking with God together. I mean, that's ideal. And so when we see the breakdown of marriage, or we see, the challenges of uninitiated, unfathered, even unmothered, boys and girls becoming men and women who get married, you start to see this thing.
And then to the point of this podcast, right? They go through this life in this way, operating this way, and many, many men we're talking about now reach this stage of elder sage and are in trouble because everything that they've looked for and looked towards for validation, affirmation, a reason for living, a reason for moving up and getting up every morning is now vanishing.
And we'll get to, I want to get to that. And we've got some guys that are kind of on this team that we'll bring in the second half of the podcast to talk more about that personally. That's back to what we're looking forward to. Those are on the mile markers. Yeah. And yet, I think about this, back to writing the book in this stage and being in the king stage, coming through the warrior stage in your 20s and 30s, entering into the king stage, 40s, 50s, and then 60s, and here comes the elder sage, that we have signed on with God to see hearts redeemed, I love that, and restored, that people could overcome and become. And yet, it's in the process of community that it happens. If that's where wounding happens, then that's also where validation and initiation, acceptance, all of the good stuff is supposed to happen. But unfortunately, it doesn't always. And sometimes I could say it doesn't often.
Right.
Because disoriented parents often grow disoriented children. But the good news of this is that we can move towards God and into a relationship with the Father. There's a reason why I believe that God wanted to be known as Father, not at the expense of Mother, not at the offense of Mother, but that the Father and Jesus, the Son, and then the Holy Spirit, the guide, the counselor, the teacher, all of this thing that we call Trinity is about growing us up. Whatever you did or didn't get, God wants the job of bringing about this thing called restoration in you, overcoming the wounding, the lies, the messages. And so the elder sage piece, here's the strategic part that I feel like God was moving in me. If we enter into an age group on the masculine journey, to see masculine hearts restored, and then if enough of them are restored, then we start to see masculinity move in a different way. And so when I looked at the explorer stage, teenagers, if we target them, if we go after them for orientation and for healing, SJ, really, they're still in it. They're still in kind of they don't have enough miles to know what we're really talking about. There's not enough wisdom earned from mistakes and from, validation and good things. And so it made more than sense to me. It began to become clearer and clearer. It's going to be 50 years before we see 10 and 14 and 16-year-olds really become the men that they are intended to be. But if we started at the end of the masculine journey and began to invest in men who are 65 and older and invite them back into the game, invite them off of the side,
undo some of what the culture has done, right?
The sidelines and even the messages of retirement, which I want to talk about in the second half, that they're the men, as I looked at what God had structured, they actually are the ones who are being given the mantle and yet not the opportunity because of things that have either happened to them or disqualifications or different things that they're maybe struggling with. But what if they could be redeemed and restored? And I'm not talking about non-Christian men necessarily. I mean, men. And particularly with believers and Christian men, are they equipped to love younger men in the kingdom? Do younger men even want to look to them? Are they relevant?
That's some of what needs to be undone.
Are they relevant in the conversation? The bigger brothers, the older brother, or the father figures. All of that.
And all of that addresses, that's where it came from.
That's where all of this started to come from.
But it all addresses some of the statistics you were talking about, right? It's our belief that God has set us up, Zoweh, to be a forerunner, a leader, a proponent of this idea, however you want to word it, that these men who have been largely sidelined by our culture and our society, including in many churches, can be mobilized to go after the fatherless younger men. And some of those younger men aren't all that much younger than an elder sage, right? To kind of redeem this idea that fathers are not only necessary, but fathers are good. Right. And can be powerful influences. And God has designed them to be powerful influences in your life.
And we've seen it. Okay. This is not without examples and merit. So we've seen, and you're an NFL guy. Okay. So we've seen NFL coaches that, and I think of Tony Dungy. And who's the current Steelers coach?
Mike Tomlin.
So Mike Tomlin. I mean, these are guys who are older brothering younger men on their team. I mean, yes, they're millionaires, but it does not exempt them.
No, just last night I watched Sean McDermott, the head coach of the Buffalo Bills, when
what an ordeal to
Damar Hamlin was injured, and McDermott, even though he's dealing with his own emotions, he is still leading his men. It's an amazing example.
So we see coaches who do that in the professional, in the college, and in the high school ranks, and so then we see it Jordan Peterson's been doing this for a long time.
Yeah.
In his classes on masculinity and ethics, and we see how many young men take his class at the University of Toronto when in those days that they were filming those classrooms.
Yeah.
To be informed, to be educated, to be encouraged, and to, here's
some of those concepts for the first time.
He's pretty thick.
I mean,
he's pretty thick chewing, man.
Oh yeah.
When you come down to that,
he is.
And so, and I feel like this is just something that we have seen some of, but not enough of.
Yeah.
And so the idea was when we look at and survey what God's kind of entrusted to us, and I think about the thousands of men that have been to our weekends, the conferences. Well, the demographic shows there's 25, 30% of them, to our best guesstimation, right, that are in this stage.
Mm-hmm.
They're coming for orientation. They're coming for intimacy with God. They're coming to learn through experiencing God's love, who they are in the kingdom, how the kingdom works, and the good that God's up to in their lives, which you said a few minutes ago is redemption and restoration.
Yeah.
And so those are the ones I believe that are being entrusted, should be entrusted, and could be entrusted on our watch with loving younger men into freedom, right? Into overcoming, into healing, because they have experienced it for themselves in walking with God.
Right.
So that's kind of the big, the big hairy deal. The big hope of what if over the next years, maybe even decade, there was a group of men on special projects, special mission, being trained and experiencing God's love in a way that they could then pass that on, hopefully even within their own families.
Yeah, equipped and trained, right?
Yeah.
I mean, equipped, encouraged.
Yes.
So first and foremost, I think, within the context of your own family. Right. Yeah. Because, you don't have to be a father for very long or the king of your kingdom for very long to make a mistake.
Yeah. It's
and to say things you wish you hadn't said or wound your charges.
Wish I'd had that one over.
Yeah. I wish I could take that pitch again, And so that's the encouragement initially. But then, we talked about the statistics of 25%, 1 in 4 fatherless home, 1 in 3 fatherless home. What we found, and what made me think of it, was you said about 20 to 25% of our attendees at the weekends are in this elder sage stage. Well, that means about 75 to 80% are before that stage, right? And of that 75 to 80% of the men who come to our weekends, 100% of them have experienced fatherless in some way, shape, or form. Yeah. Even if they're, to your point earlier, even if their fathers were there.
All stars, yeah.
There's this idea like, well, my dad was there, at least I had a dad. Well, can we talk about that a little bit more? Because there's a 100% injury rate in this game.
Yeah.
And so equipping these men who have the mileage behind them, and then this path of healing they've been on personally, and like getting their own house in order to some degree, right?
Yeah.
So they have this unique perspective on life where they can go after these younger men who have been missed in many ways and feel kind of lost. Like, I have a dad, but he's not helping me figure this out. So it's exciting to me. I want to read a little bit. This is an advanced, uncorrected reader's copy of King Me, which tells me we're getting pretty close to the release.
Yeah, man.
But I want to read just a little bit of a excerpt I found about what you wrote about the elder sage stage. Merriam-Webster's defines an elder as one having authority by virtue of age and experience, and sage as one, such as a profound philosopher, distinguished for wisdom, or a mature or venerable person of sound judgment. That sounds like somebody I want teaching me things, right? And just hanging around a fire pit with or whatever. While the two words are similar in meaning, elder stresses age, like the chronological age, someone whose influence comes from having seen and accurately interpreted many years of life, while sage puts the emphasis on wisdom. Connecting the two words into elder sage gives a complete picture of this final stage in a man's journey. Not every older man is a wise man, and not every sage is old. Jesus was only 30, right, when he began his ministry as a rabbi. But an elder sage is both, uniting age and wisdom into someone both powerful and kind.
Yeah. Yeah, man. So I don't love that because I wrote it. I love it because it's true.
That's what we should have just said.
That's right.
Instead of talking the last 20 minutes. But
here's the deal, SJ, that I get so excited about this whole initiative is I don't think it's arguable. So I'm not going to say arguably. I'm going to say there's not enough good kings on the landscape.
Yeah.
There's not enough good warriors on the landscape. Mm-hmm. And you put 30 years on those men, if they are not validated and initiated by older men, right? They're going to move into this stage. Mm-hmm. Well, I think we're looking at this stage in the reality. They're going to move into this stage bruised, diminished, either unwanted or unwilling to step in and offer because something in their story tells them, no, don't.
Yeah.
Or someone, Kingdom of Darkness is, I think, all about corrupting and interrupting and in some ways fracturing this journey so that they feel like they have nothing to say. The younger generations don't respect them in a way that you described. You just said, I would want to be with that guy. And yet we know in the hero's journey, okay, before we take a break, we know in the journey, every story that matters to us, whether it's galaxies far, far away or it's
Hobbits in the Shire
or it's fantasy,
whatever
the story is, there is the elder sage. They are required for the ones journeying to not only get to their destination, to get to the prize, to get to what's called the golden elixir, to bring it back to the community, to bring it back to the village. For them to get there, the elder sage has to be in the story.
Yeah.
And offer what they know and at the same time go with. So we see Gandalf.
I was just going to ask you, I know this isn't in our notes, but who's your favorite? Like, if you could pick a favorite. All right, think about it for a second, and I'll respond to my own question.
Okay.
Because the one that popped into my head immediately, maybe it was because you said galaxies far, far away, but I love Yoda, man. I mean, talk about underestimated and somewhat, like, forgotten by his opponents.
Yeah.
Just unbelievable sage wisdom, and you look at the guy, and you're like, okay, if you had some physical prowess at one time, I'm not sure what that means because you're 3.5 feet tall or whatever it is. But then he, in some of the earlier movies, I mean, he is deadly.
Yeah.
In terms of the physical realm.
Yeah.
But his real power, and that's the whole point of the whole story. I get Christopher in here, our teammate. He's a Star Wars. He loves it.
Yeah.
His real power is in his sageliness and his wisdom. And it's even confusing to guys like Luke Skywalker, who is in this way younger stage and still, let's just go beat him up.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah.
So it's amazing.
So it's a great question. I'm going to say when the guys come on, I'll answer that after the break.
All right.
Because I want some more time to think about it, honestly.
I got you, man.
I've got two that are kind of right there. So I may have a winner and a honorable mention to give you after the break. But we'll continue with the Elder Sage Initiative, this podcast with a couple of our good friends here in just a minute. We'll see you in a minute on the Exploring More podcast.
Be right back.
In a flash, a pathway emerges, just a few moves away. It's on the tip of your tongue. Just one more move and you can say it. King Me. Coming this spring by Michael Thompson.
All right, welcome back to the Exploring More podcast. And boom, right?
Wham.
2 to 4, multiplication. Here with the Elder Sages. You asked me before.
Yeah.
You asked me before the break, right?
Your favorite example of an Elder Sage from movie or film or books or whatever.
I got two. That's right. I got two right here.
Yeah, that's the caveat. Yeah. You can't schmooze these guys by picking one of them. You have to from movies or some stories.
Yeah.
You can't steal Mr. Rogers. He's mine.
Okay.
Yeah, he's a good one.
He's a good one.
Yeah, and he's not in the pretend world or the fantasy world, character world. He's real. Gandalf has got to be one of the greatest for sure. I love the Karate Kid, the Miyagi, you know, and even the fun of the next generation of Cobra Kai. If anybody's watched Cobra Kai, I mean, you see the legacy of Miyagi, even though he goes from one episode to he's brilliant to, oh my gosh, what a knucklehead, you know, dude.
I resemble that.
Yeah. It's like, come on, man. Miyagi would not do that, you know, but there's the reality of, you know, characters like that who are coming alongside yes, they have their own story, but they are bringing something to, usually not just one character, but to several who are on the journey who need that voice, that strength, that kindness. And yet sometimes that stern, you know, that it's okay if this character's disappointed. It's part of loving, actually, you know, to be in that space. So
interesting that the three examples that we brought, I brought up Yoda the last episode, Gandalf and Miyagi. All three of them, what they first present is their wisdom and their sageliness. And then you find out they can also kick ass.
Yeah, they're well, they've been warriors, right? They've been warriors. They've been kings. They've been in these spaces. That's the whole point of the elder sage, that, you know, what he was or wasn't in that stage, there's been redemption. And he's walked with God in a way that now, yeah, he probably has some regrets. There's some things he would do differently, but that's the point. He knows that.
Right.
He sees that. And it's part of that wisdom that comes with the humility of, yeah, I didn't do all this right. You know, so they have a story too. You just typically don't get to see, but look at what Hollywood's doing now. All the prequels, you know, little baby Yoda, you know, with the Mandalorian. I mean, so
you don't get much more prequel than
we've got all kinds of stories like that yeah, we want to know what was that story? What was Gandalf's story, you know, with the Rings of Power, you know, that Amazon put out. So anyway, but back to having real live elder sages here. Yeah. So
hello.
Yeah, Jim, that's right.
I do have a little bone to pick with you, by the way.
Yeah.
I loved the earlier discussion about elder sage. I loved your enthusiasm for it. But when you described the elder sage stage as the end stage of the masculine journey, I mean, yes, end is descriptive and it's motivational, but I think a much better word would be the pinnacle stage of the masculine journey.
I agree.
Yeah. And I would say, I don't have a bone to pick, but I would say with you two, that's how we want this to go. We want this to be the pinnacle, not the end.
Amen.
And I think there's a difference. There's something, you know, to arriving at this stage and having something to offer because the other stages have been redeemed. And the linear part, which we were talking about the mileage, right? The thing about this stage and what you said earlier, a younger man can be sagely. He's just not older.
Right.
You know, and then there can be older who doesn't have the wisdom of the sage because he hasn't learned this. So we're bringing these words together to describe the pinnacle. I like that, Jim. The pinnacle of the masculine journey when, and we'll talk about that. But I just want to introduce you guys officially. I think many have probably heard Jim Chenet, at least heard you, but I'm not sure. Is this the first time you've been on since we changed formats?
On the visual.
On the visual, yeah. Well, ladies and gentlemen, Jim Chenet. This is
sorry.
So, and this is Jim McCauley. Jim Chenet helps run the Medic initiative at Zoweh. He, 20 years we've been friends and walking in this Zoweh space. Jim's worn a lot of hats. Before we even got to the formal spaces of this, I think I would say Jim Chenet's been a good older brother to me in this journey. And then more recent, the last couple years, has been Jimmy Mack. And we say Jimmy Mack a lot of times because if you say Jim in the same room, neither one of them may hear it because
that's cool.
But secondly, I had to put that. There we go. Yeah. But really, to have two Jims, right? So we got the two Jims in here. We're between two Jims.
We are.
But to have Jimmy Mack here, you guys have been walking with me since, I'll say it this way, the kind of the conception of this whole idea of the value, the beauty, the significance, the weightiness of an elder sage. And so I think I would ask, as we did our best to kind of get it on the table, what attracted you to this conversation, to this, this type of brotherhood known as the elder sage, as you guys we were starting to unveil it and unfold it, and then you guys started to contribute to it. What was the initial, though, idea? And tell them your age.
Yeah, Michael. Well, I'm Jim. I'm 67.
Okay.
And as I think back on it, I think God kind of tricked me into it. And I hope that some of you watching this or listening to this in the future will have the same experience. I feel like I moved to North Carolina just in the last couple of years and had no idea at all about finding a group of men that would have so much vision and so much heart for what God wanted to do in our community. So metaphorically, I feel like I was just walking down this path that God kind of drew me along, just wandering, minding my own business, and I found myself at a fireside, in a circle of men sitting around a fire, talking about kingdom stuff that just resonated with my heart. I wasn't searching for it by no means. But I just feel like God drew me into this community and into this message.
Yeah. So what is it specifically about the elder sage? I remember that too. The first Wednesday you came, and just in all transparency, to our Wednesday group, my first response was like, why are we inviting new guys into the circle? What's going on here? And then and I fell in love with you immediately. So,
thank you.
Yeah, I did. But what is it about the Elder Sage Initiative specifically that is just lights you up? Because I watch you both, and when we talk about this, you both just come to life. What is it about the initiative itself?
One of the first conversations, SJ, that we had sitting around that fire circle was about a book that y'all had just finished reading or were in the process of reading, a book by Richard Rohr, I think called Falling Upward. Yeah,
first half and second half.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And I left that conversation, got on my phone, ordered it on Amazon, and by the time I was back the next week, I had read the book. Mm-hmm. And I thought there was just something intriguing about this idea. I'd been exposed to it before, but this idea of the sequential and necessary developmental steps of men, of people. And I thought it was amazing the way that Richard Rohr, unlike so much of our society, attributed so much value and worth to men in their later stage of life, reaching the pinnacle of their empowerment of their life, their the pinnacle of their ability to contribute and to have meaningful input into others. So that was, you guys were talking about that, and I just thought, man, that sounds like such good stuff. I'm going to keep coming back.
Glad you are. What about you, Jim?
Yeah. So, Michael, when you first started sharing this idea with me, the thoughts about Elder Sage Initiative, over a year ago.
Yeah, more than just about.
I just felt my heart start to beat a little bit faster. I feel almost like God was preparing me my whole life for this time in my life. My first job was as a teacher and a football coach, and I love seeing young people develop, especially guys that wanted to improve and be good athletes, and I just loved working with them. And then I was in sales, and I was helping clients achieve their goals, and then I was a sales manager helping people achieve their goals, and then I started my own business about 25 years ago, and I hired a life coach, and the life coach walked with me through that process, and I loved that, and so I asked the life coach to help me become a life coach. So I feel like I've been working towards this my whole life. It is the pinnacle of my life, and it's just not the joy of getting to walk with another man through his life, through his growth, but it's also the joy of getting to do that with other elder sages. I mean, it's a redemptive community of elder sages too. So, I mean, there's those two benefits. Mm-hmm. You're helping another person one at a time usually, and then you're also in this team, which, don't we love teams?
Teams, yeah. I like that. I think that you guys were in the room when we did part 1, and I'd love to just kind of tee up your response to that. Why? Or another question, why is this important? Or why do you see, I know you've bought into this idea that this initiative could, with God's help, with God's favor, could turn the tide, could be very significant. And it's not something we'll measure in a year. I think it's something that we'll measure in a decade, and looking back, what would 10 years of pursuing this look like? So why, part 1 any response to part 1, and then secondly, why do you feel like this is important enough to be giving your time, your heart, your attention, whiteboards too, where we can put strategy together about this? And I want to talk about some more of that as we get into this part 2, but.
Well, I have the life experiences of having a man walk with me, and the life experiences of not having anybody walk with me, and the struggle, the mess that not having another person to bounce ideas off with to help me correct my course without getting into all the details of that mess was awful. Yeah. And then later having someone come into my life. I mean, there's just a few instances of people who have cared about me and have asked me questions and have listened to me and have walked with me and helped me to walk with God in this process. So just the personal experience of good and bad. And sometimes we learn more from the bad experiences, don't we? Yeah. I mean, I became a football coach, and I don't think I had great football coaches before that. As a matter of fact, I wanted to be a coach because of all the bad examples I had gotten from some of the coaches I had, because I knew I could do it better. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And so.
Yeah, that's it. The benefit, that's a good way to say it. What I heard you say was, I've benefited from it, and I've also experienced the loss of not having it. Yeah, exactly. And that's a part of why it's important to you. That's, that's awesome. That's really good. How about you, Jimmy?
One of the things I really appreciated hearing you say, Jim, is you feel like God has kind of brought you to this point. And if there's one reason why I think this whole elder sage is important to people in our larger community, people all around us, is that God has something for us in every stage of our development. Whether you're an explorer, whether you're in the boyhood stage, whether you're in the king stage, God has this incredible sequence he has this incredible developmental plan, one that builds, like you talked in the earlier session, builds naturally one on the other. If you fail to pick up all the pieces in an earlier stage, you're going to be lacking those. They're not going to be in your bag when you need them in the next stage. So I feel like I've only really been in this message for probably about the last 15 years. I hadn't heard about that kind of stuff. But in the last 15 years, God has helped me to do a lot of catching up. Mm-hmm.
Nice.
I've had to go back to the stage when I was 12 and either picked up some junk or didn't pick up all the pieces. And I had to go back to the king stage when I was trying to raise my family without all the tools I needed and build a business without all the skills that I could have used. But I come to this stage now and realize really two things. First of all, in order to own the stage successfully for myself, I need to step into it. Like I can't be a guy that says, I'm neither elder, which I like to say, nor am I a sage, which may be true. But the truth is I'm at a point in my life and at a developmental stage of my life, not just chronologically, but where God has brought me, that I need to step into it and own it, right?
I think that's some of the motivation of being in this stage. I mean, let's be honest, we don't have that much time. There is a lot of motivation to usually we're 1 foot on the dock and 1 foot on the boat. It's not time for that anymore. We got it in the boat.
And another way to say that is if I've learned anything along the way, I've learned that it's important to grab onto what's available to me during those stages. Otherwise, you have to go back and get it, you know? Mm-hmm. So now at this point, I just want to grab it, right? Yeah. And I think the second point is I understand that especially as over the last 15 years, God has literally been building the foundation and laying the groundwork for me to step into this. Like I feel like not only do I need to, but I feel like this is exactly what God has for me right now.
That's strong.
Has that come through the journey of healing that you've been on, like the preparation for entering into this stage, like you just referred to? Was that the journey of healing, or was it something else?
Yeah, I think there's been a lot of healing over the past 15 years that I referred to. Sometimes healing in areas that were only exposed to me later on, like. I think everybody has stuff that happens in their family of origin, with their mom, with their dad, with their brothers, sisters, aunts, uncles. I had stuff like that, but I had no insight into it, right? Mm-hmm. I didn't have any insight. We talk sometimes about wounding. Mm-hmm. Well, I guess as I look back, I had these slashes, these gaping wounds, but I didn't know they were there. They weren't visible to me. Mm-hmm. So yeah, part of the process has been through healing.
Yeah. Before we talk about retirement, I know you got a retirement question, but we talked about in part one just the fatherlessness in the culture, and maybe you guys could comment to your own experience, but also to the experience that you have watching, younger generations in this. If it's a significant contributing factor to the problem, fatherlessness. One, how was your life impacted? And I don't want to throw our dads under the bus. Yeah. Every time we bring this up, I almost always want to do that caveat, like, hey, there's a reality to it. It's a tough job, we know, and yet it doesn't excuse us from the responsibility of doing it well or recovering when we didn't. Mm-hmm. But this is about fathering. I think we have it on the website, Jim, Fathering Hearts to the Father. Mm. And I remember an old seminary professor who said, it's impossible to impart what you don't own. So to have healing in your life is critical then to be able to help another man with healing in his life. Mm-hmm. Or validation in your life. If you can't receive a compliment, we talk about it like that. If you can't receive a compliment, then when you compliment that younger man and it doesn't work, or you haven't received compliments, so you don't even think to compliment that guy. You know what I mean? So two things: your father experience in this from part one, and then as you look at fathering, older brothering, I think is another great way to say it, because I'm 58, but I need older brothers. I need older men in my life. So where does that take you before we talk about this retirement thing?
So two things for me. The first, a profound lesson, a profound insight, I guess, that I had years ago was that even though my father was present for some part of my growing up years, physically present, he was emotionally and in every other way absent. And when I heard words like fatherlessness, I thought, well, that doesn't apply to me because my dad was there. But it was incredible to realize the destruction, the stuff that hurt me as a young boy. Yeah. Because I couldn't work out the dissonance between having my dad physically present but not having him be a part of my life. Not engaged. That's a good word. Yeah. Not engaged. So he was there, but he wasn't engaged. And I never thought of that in terms of this concept of fatherlessness. And when I finally got a grip on the image that you could have a dad, in fact, I think a lot of men have dads that were there, but weren't engaged, dads that were there but weren't present. It just opened up so much for me. And so one of the things as a result of that I really try to carry into this role of engaging with men, with younger men, is this simple act of showing up.
Yeah, that's good.
It's all about being present. Like there's so many times when I feel like I don't have the words, I don't have the idea, I don't have the training, I don't. And what I've learned is 99% of being effective is just showing up.
Mm-hmm. And we're not talking about being present like your dad and my dad were present, but being engaged. Present.
Yeah. Right. Physical presence is different than the presence you're talking about.
Thanks for clarifying that, because that's exactly what I meant.
Before Jim answers, I don't know if you realize how Jim was saying, the lack of good role models, good men in your life has inspired you to try to be one. That is just a great. You just gave a story problem answer to. I had a dad who wasn't, and he wasn't present, so it inspires me to be present because I know what it's like to not have that.
Yeah. Right.
So that's redemption. When you see something like that redeemed, because there's only a couple ways you can go when you have a present dad who's absent. It is, what is wrong with me? And usually there's a superlative in there.
Yeah,
what the hell is wrong with me, or worse? Or what is wrong with him? Mm-hmm. Both of which are divisive, and the enemy can get in there in the garden of the family of origin, and just wreak havoc. Because now I've got to prove to him, or I don't care about him. I mean, it just leads to this just bad. And that's that goodness that's corrupted through that experience. And so I love that you're seeing redemption in your story through the engagement in the Elder Sage initiative. That's awesome.
It just puts a spotlight for me on the need for healing, though. Because you can bring that sentiment, what the hell's wrong with him, what the hell's wrong with me, into the Elder Sage stage.
Yeah.
And then give that kind of biased, warped kind of advice that comes out of a place of hurt, rather than engaging in healing, right? And then giving the guidance out of that healed place, like you were talking about, which, we just want to add the caveat. Everyone is on the journey of healing until you are in the presence of Jesus, right? It's not like, I'm not trying to say you're not doing great, Jim, because you are. But it's what we're not trying to say, audience, is that he's got it all figured out. You should email jimmymac@zoweh.org.
Yeah, no,
because he's got all the answers.
That's not the point at all. But I think, just let me jump on that for a moment. The fact that we're in process doesn't disqualify us either from engaging.
Right.
And I'm just so afraid that so many men that are coming into this Elder Sage and hearing this invitation, this message for the first time, are going to respond to it by saying, I don't have the qualifications. Right. I'm not there yet. I don't have my degree, right? And I think this is exactly as you said, this is very much.
We're all on a journey.
And you guys heard that a lot.
Engaging with the process.
As you guys have entered into the Elder Sage Initiative and have invited other men that God put on your heart, did you hear that a lot from them? Like, I'm not qualified, or
I'm not sure I can do that, or I'm not qualified, or I don't have the time, or I'm not sure what it is.
Yeah.
And it's just to put an exclamation point on your point about healing. Of course, God is the great healer, and He will heal us. But it sure is helpful to have somebody walking with you in that process with God, helping you, especially if the thing I hear the most is I don't hear from God. God doesn't talk to me. God doesn't communicate with me. If somebody can help me to understand that maybe it's not an audible voice, maybe it's going to be this way. Did you try this? Ask me questions, listen to me, help me get that hearing that voice and the healing that comes with that. It's huge.
Yeah. To Michael's point earlier about I think you said a pastor told you, or a professor, I can't remember which, you can't impart what you haven't received. Right. And so this journey of healing, it's so important to embark on it. It's not completion. It's not like you have to have some kind of a certificate and then you can be in the Elder Sage Initiative. But, embarking on the journey of healing is important.
Right.
So that's a good, I know we got a few minutes left, and I want to turn into, it's not one of my favorite words, but practical parts of this. Like how does this work? How does somebody get involved? What have we been working on, or what have you guys been giving your attention to so that, we're making room for a larger table with more seats for more elder sages? I think it's been an incredible 6-8 months of taking concept. And yes, there's some stuff in King Me in the chapter, but almost giving this its own identity and its own importance. And there's a structure to that. So I'm just going to kind of throw that out there. Like, how do men get involved in this? What's it look like? And what are you guys hopeful for?
Well, because the integrity of this initiative is so important, as you might expect, there is and I know you love this word, process.
Process.
There is a journey that an integrity level that we need to make sure that the elder sages have achieved in order to help someone else. Yeah. We want oriented men. So it's a multi-step process. It has to do with, walking with God intimately and reading certain books and coming to events and demonstrating some healing, and that you're familiar with the masculine journey. You're familiar with what we call 2 realms, 2 kingdoms, which basically means that we are spiritual beings in a physical world, and there's a spiritual element to the battle that we're in.
The war is real, yeah.
The war is real. And so there's certain kind of qualifiers, is not a great word, but achievements that we would like to make sure that the elder sages have
mile markers
been through in order to become a Zoweh elder sage.
And to be clear, if maybe some of those mile markers haven't quite been hit, it's not like, here's your hat, what's your hurry, right?
See you later.
Right. It's like, hey, why don't we get some lunch? Or what I've observed you guys doing is engaging with these men, whether they're, self-disqualifying, you don't know what I've done or been through, or whether they really do need a little bit more healing on their journey.
Well, we're all on that journey.
Right. But you guys have really been great about inviting guys into the process, if not into the initiative.
Yes.
What's interesting is you say that. The truth is that most men are a little bit ashamed of the fact that they need to go back and pick up some pieces. And one of the beauties of this whole elder sage thing, the way that it's been conceptualized and that we're working, is it's really kind of a one-on-one experience where we get to go back and walk with somebody and say, hey, you're right. There's a piece missing there. Let's just go back and attend to it. Let's just go back and take some time with that so that we can move forward. And it's liberating for guys to feel like they're not disqualified just because they missed picking up the blue pebble along the way. Do you know?
Yeah.
Makes sense?
So, oh my gosh, I got 10 things to say, but I'm going to just boil it down to, not every guy in the gym can play. As a basketball player, not every guy in the gym can play. You can put shoes on, you can wear a headband, you can have the gear.
And they think they can play.
But they're in a gym, so they think they can play. And I know there's men out there that this is what we're saying. There's a certain way, you've said this before, there's a certain way that Belichick, that the Patriots play. And there's players that got picked up and they start to play for the Patriots, and all of a sudden this guy's an all-pro. So there's some of that behind this. Secondly, there's an entrusting, right? The quality and the beauty of, we want to entrust men to good men. And we're not assuming that you're a bad man. What we're assuming is you might need a little training. And come on, if we're honest, if you in your retirement, you went to Walmart to take a job at Walmart as a greeter, you're still going to get training.
Right. Yeah.
They're still.
Here's how you say hello.
They're not going to let you have the front door without something. And it takes me this story real quick about a retirement guy who did go to Walmart and so you know the story. And so he's showing up for work like right on the dot or a few minutes late. And finally the manager approaches this older gentleman and says, hey, look, you're always like 5 minutes late. Like what is the deal? Why are you always late? And the guy says, the older gentleman says, I'm sorry. He says, well, why do you think you can get away? What did he say? Why do you think you can get away with that?
Yeah,
or,
something like
you know,
that.
what do you expect? I mean, why do you, keep coming in late? He said, well, honestly, in my former life, when I would come in the room, that's when things would get started. He said, well, how's that? He said, well, that's when everybody would say 10 hut. A former general, a former colonel, a former officer.
Nothing started
and so,
until you arrived.
So there is that beautiful part, I think, of the elder sage where most men won't realize who they're sitting next to. Most younger men won't realize the story that you are.
Humility,
and that you're in. Yeah. And so I do want to share for the elder sages that we're hopeful will come on board. You guys, we've created a video series that helps answer. Could you want to talk a minute about the video series and what you're hopeful for there?
Yeah, we were we got a group of elder sages together and had a fairly comprehensive video series that we'll probably have about 4 parts. It's still being developed. It should be out in about the middle of February. And it will explain the whole elder sage process and what it is, why it's important, and how to get involved in it. So it should be some short but interesting videos that will help a lot, give the information that guys need.
Yeah, I think one of the coolest things about this is the message of the 4 parts of the video is overlaid by the stories of a dozen or more men.
Yeah.
So you get to hear stories about people that said, I didn't know this was for me, but I've discovered that this could be for me. I didn't know this was for me, but it's become one of the most fruitful and impactful things of my entire life. And so, we're not trying to sell something that has no value or worth. We're trying to sell something that has incredible value in the kingdom, but we're also trying to sell something, and through this video series, introduce men to something that will have incredible impact in their lives. If guys aren't living the pinnacle experience, this is one pathway to get to the pinnacle experience.
Yeah.
The video thing it's amazing. It's going to be great.
Yeah, to jump on one of your turns of phrase there, we're not trying to sell just another video series, right? We're trying to start a movement.
Yeah, we're trying to invite men. Yeah. Our culture, our society says that you're 55, 57, 62, 65 and out. You're out. And what we're trying to say is that's not the way the kingdom works. Mm-hmm. The way the kingdom works is you get to this stage and you have the possibility to be more in than you've ever been in your whole life. Mm-hmm. And that's where the joy is.
Yeah.
That's what we're made for. That's what this whole succession of developmental phases, it's all about getting to the elder sage point because that's where the jewels are. That's the pot at the end of the rainbow.
That's great, man.
Yeah, the elder sage is a stage where a man's kingdom is being often turned over to others, but his influence is supposed to be just starting in a whole new in a whole new space. Obviously, if you're a king and you've been entrusted with a business, or you've been entrusted with employees, or you've been entrusted with wealth or relationships, that's your kingdom. But I think go back to Gandalf, and I think about he's got a king who's stuck in warrior stage, right? In Aragorn, who's not becoming who he was meant to be. He's got hobbits. He's got these explorers, boys. I mean, he's got the masculine journey with him.
Yep.
And he's got Legolas and the warriors. So he is not only imparting to them things that he's learned, and there's some hard lessons, in this space. And for men to be entrusted with other men in their marriages, other men in their fatherhood, other men in maybe their finances or business, that's why we want there's some quality, there's some training. And in the training, I'm hopeful that there'll be validation and initiation and brotherhood. What if, let's just guess, what if in the end of, let's say, 24 months, 2 years. This video series, I know, by the way, it doesn't cost anything because it's going to be on YouTube. It's going to be on Right Now Media.
Yeah,
it's the invitation
for clarity,
for guys to come into a website and apply, and then become apprentices at 65 or 68 or 75, right? But just as we wrap this up, what would it look like to have 10,000 elder sages on the landscape of not maybe this country, maybe the world? 10,000. What would 10,000 do?
I think that the kingdom would be rejoicing. Yeah.
And younger men would benefit, and legacy would be restored. It may not be done perfectly. I'm pretty sure it won't be.
Yeah.
But what if it's done well? Because then 2 more years, what could 10,000 of them become?
100,000.
100,000. And then in another 2 or 3 years, the men that they have entrusted, loving them, leading them, and caring for them, 6, 8 years from now, well, guess what? Those kings are now coming into the elder sage stage.
Right.
And now you got 100,000 elder sages who are impacting a couple 100,000 kings and warriors, and those guys. I mean, can you imagine? And I don't want you to imagine, okay? But could you imagine the end of life celebrations of those men who finished well? People would be out the doors.
That'd be great.
To talk about the investment that those guys made in younger men, the influence, and maybe through the video series, maybe through other resources. I mean, this we're not going to try this. We're committed to this project. We're committed to this, and I can't wait to see what God's going to do in you and through you as He partners with all of us in the Elder Sage Initiative. Any last thoughts? Let me honor the Elder Sages by giving anything that was on your heart coming in that maybe we didn't get to. I want to just give you the floor.
If you still have a pulse, you have a purpose. If you ain't dead, you ain't done.
All right.
I want to just go back to something I said a moment ago. I think our culture and our society offers older guys diminishment.
Mm-hmm.
But our Father, our Heavenly Father, Jesus, offers us the kingdom.
Amen.
Mm-hmm.
Diminishment or more, right? A vacuous existence, trying to learn how to play golf.
Collecting seashells or whatever,
Or a month at Maui.
Yeah.
I mean, I'll take that every time. Let's go. I mean, this is what I was made for, and I think so many people watching this right now are going to have the same sense. I was made for this.
Right.
Yeah.
Let me in.
Yeah.
Yep. Questions, comments, listeners, and watchers, please, hit us in the comments below. We'll look for in the description on this video the website and more information about the Elder Sage Project and about Zoweh. Send us an email, exploringmore@zoweh.org. Leave us a rate review on your podcast platform of choice. It really helps us to be found.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you guys for being on with us.
Thanks for the invitation.
Exploring more. And I believe there'll be some more of these just for the Elder Sage. I can't wait 6 months, 8 months from now, maybe 4 months where we get to come back and have another Elder Sage conversation, because you know how much life changes in 4 months?
Oh, man.
I mean, initiatives, and things that were on the calendar, in March, April, and May, and then you've hit those places and what happened and how it happened and the effect of it all. So I'm really excited about what you guys are doing, getting to do it with you, and I'm honored that you let me do it with you as well. So for the guys at the table, thank you for joining us for the Exploring More podcast. We'll see you next time.
We hope you have enjoyed this episode of Exploring More. The landing page for this podcast is zoweh.org/podcast. That's ZOWEH.org/podcast, where you can find the show notes and various platforms to which we broadcast. You can also find us and the Life of More by visiting Zoweh on YouVersion Bible app, Right Now Media, our Facebook page, and Zoweh on Instagram and Twitter. Remember, with God there is always more, and you were made for more.